ground, no pun intended here. By we've tried to hit as many trades as we possibly can, and we've done plumbing and we've done solar and we've done, I mean, you name it. But I don't think we've gotten into ponds or waterscapes or anything like that. So what better guest to have on than Eric Triplett, who is the pond digger? I mean, seriously, we're going for it, man. Eric, how are you, man? Welcome to the Good Contractor podcast.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah,
Let's make a splash.
Let's make a splash together. I like it. Let's start off with a metaphor. One of the cool things when I was reading your story and I was you and I were chatting about doing this was I noticed in your bio, and I think the coolest part of telling folks stories about the trades is like 20 years ago, you wrote, you went off to follow your dream. Because usually I say, well, how'd you get into this? So it sounds like you were doing something else. And 20 years ago, you're like, you know what? I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to follow my dream. So talk about your journey. What were you doing before you were the pond digger, and what made you decide this was your dream and this was something you wanted to pursue?
Okay, so this is long before Gary Vaynerchuk told you to follow, like Smurf it up, right? If you like Smurf, Smurf it up. Way before that, right? I think that was 2003 or 7 or something. I don't know. I was a journeyman framer. Okay. I was about 22 or 23. Got out of high school at 17. I'm a framer at 23. And I was running crews, and in these crews, I was in charge of these guys that were in their late 50s, early 60s. And they were burnt, dude. They were burnt out, and they were just like, they're getting bossed around by this 23-year-old guy up on the roofs making shit happen. And I had this weird feeling. I'm like, this could be me one day. I just don't want to do this. I love being in construction. I love being on a roof, no shirt on, tool bags, hair halfway down my back. I mean, that was cool. But I just, for somehow had this forecast, this vision that could be me in 40 years. And I don't want that to happen.
What was it about? Okay. So how do you go from framing to what you're doing now? Like, where was the intersection between those two things?
Okay. So the intersection was, thanks for asking. I was fascinated by fish. I got an aquarium for Christmas when I was 19. So I was still an apprentice. I didn't know crap. I'm out there, trying to find my way. And I was just infatuated with it. And like all my spare time, if I wasn't skateboarding or surfing, I was doing aquariums, right? And this is well before the internet. And then I was so infatuated, like my family got tired of hearing me talking about it. And so I had to like import friends that were into fish, and then, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Eric's dating profile in 2001, like him on the face of Finding Nemo, just like looking out there looking for the one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. So you were into fish. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
That's good stuff though.
This is like early 90s, you know what I mean? And so I just, something really struck me as I went into this aquarium store all the time, and the kid of the owner told me that he was going to go to people's homes and take care of their aquariums, and he was going to sell them stuff and bring them fish, and they were going to pay him just to show up and clean tanks and like design them and stuff. And I was like, what? I never heard of such a thing. And it really struck me. I thought about it constantly. And so like, that's kind of the intersection.
When did you dig your first pond? That's what I'm curious. Like your very first one.
Yeah.
Was that for you or for a business?
It was for me. It was interesting because there wasn't much in the early 90s as far as information gathering. And, so I built a couple little, dug some holes, put some concrete in it, kind of screwed around. But it was in 96 to 99. That's when I built my first like pond. I was like, oh, I could do this. This is cool. I could get into this. Because it was more like construction. It wasn't just running around and cleaning aquariums. I mean, we did some really cool installs in walls, really killer aquariums with cabinets and all this stuff. But it wasn't until I built that first pond where you're driving machines and you got 6 guys moving rock. And I'm like, this is cool. This got me that flashback to being on a roof running crews,
I'm picturing your framing. You got into framing. Did this overlap with I mean, you were into fish and aquariums and stuff, so I'm sure that
Yeah.
like that didn't just happen at 23 or whatever. So you were into framing. Um, where in that period of time did like the fish store come in? Did you start doing, it sounds like you did some maybe aquarium installs, then you got into building ponds. Like,
Yeah.
did any of that overlap like with you having a day job?
I was framing for a while I did aquariums. But I'd starved for a while. Trust
Okay.
me, I was making good money as a crew chief, a foreman up on, framing. And in between jobs back in the 90s, I would work for this contractor, and then that job would finish and I'd go work for that contractor and that job would finish. So I would move around quite a bit and I was always busy. But I remember, I would do aquariums on the weekends. I actually bought a service route from a guy who was retiring, and he had like 10 aquariums he took care of. So I bought that route from him, and then I ran around and did those jobs on the weekends. And it wasn't enough to live on, but I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have a truck payment. I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. I was like, I don't know why I thought of it, but I was like, I gotta try it now before I get pinned down to something. Right. So, that was the
Yeah,
overlap.
my question was what, because I think anytime we're into something, it's like, okay, I want to make this my passion. And even if you have a construction background or a framing background or whatever it is before you move to the next thing, there's the education piece of it. Was there a mentor that was like, because I know like for all of us old enough to remember before the internet, there was a time when we're like, I need someone to teach me how to do this. Like YouTube isn't available. I don't have. What was your education piece of learning about all this stuff?
In the beginning, as far as aquariums goes, it was literally like figuring it out along the way. You would read books. I would read THF, Tropical Fish Hobbyist magazines, and learn about fish and things like that. And I'd be reading these books, like scientific books on, where these cichlids came from. Really geeky shit. You know what I mean? Like really.
I love it.
When I got into ponds, there was a manufacturer that like kind of had a system that worked, like a 20-step process. And because I had that background, I took some time off between framing, and I quit framing and I went into aquarium installation and maintenance and that kind of routine. There was about a 5-year period where I only did aquariums and just dabbled in ponds. And then I really got serious about ponds, and there was like a 20-step process. And so I picked it up naturally because, it's like framing a house. It's like running a team. It's like spreading materials. It's like, it just came really natural to me to get back into construction.
Yeah. That's cool. That is really cool. And I think what has also been neat about like reading your story is it started off here and it moved to here and it moved to here. And whether it was aquariums or ponds, I think the neat part is you've also gotten to do some big projects. And I was looking back on your website of the projects that you started to pick up, and some were like for a zoo. Like this was not just residential, but you were getting involved with some big organizations. Can you talk about how your business was growing and like picking up a route and doing aquariums to like, oh wow, this is a big job outside of I'm just building a koi pond or I'm doing something from a residential perspective. Can you talk about as your jobs kind of grew, what that was like?
Yeah. So when I got real serious about it, it was around 99 to 2001, in that range, right? So I remember 99, I was like, I'm going to be a pond builder, right? Around 2001, I got rid of the aquariums. I gave it to a buddy of mine that I'd known forever. I'm like, bro, you do my aquariums, you pay me some money, I'm going to go do ponds full time. And at the time, we were doing like 100 ponds a year from like 2001, 2, 3, 4. Wow. It was like we were really moving ponds. So we were doing pond tours, and we were doing like construction events where we teach the public how to do it. And so my name and my brand equity grew really quite a lot in that 4-year span. And so back then there was Yellow Pages. If you can remember back.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So 2001, 2, 3, it was Yellow Pages, right? So I'm in the Yellow Pages, and like if you went to ponds, you look down the thing and you could skip past ponds and you go like, wait a minute, come back, one guy. The pond digger would be right there, right?
AAA ponds.
Yeah. But by the time like 2003 hit, you'd go to the pond section, there'd be 18 guys. If you had a truck and a
Ooh.
wheelbarrow and a shovel, like you turned into a pond guy in 2003. So that was just like
Was that because of what you were doing? Like how much of pent up
yeah,
pond demand was there that like, oh, I've always wanted a pond and now I know
yeah.
that the pond digger like exists. Like that's just a thing I can call someone and there's like someone who specializes in that versus like if I wanted a pond, who would I call? I don't really know. I would maybe call a builder or Google or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, how much of the other people branding themselves as pond builders was because you were doing it?
Locally, I think it was a phenomenon locally for me in my area because, I was successful in it. Manufacturers were putting me on magazines and stuff like that. And as far as
Mm,
Southern California goes, I was in like, say, Palm Springs kind of area, right? And then you had
Mm-hmm.
LA
yeah.
Basin, and then you had Northern California, you had San Diego, extreme Southern California. So there was particular pond guys in each of these locations. And there was definitely a time around that time period where nationally ponds just became incredibly popular. New York, New
Hmm.
Jersey,
Ah.
Chicago, Minnesota, all across the country, Florida, all these, it was like the gold mine, the gold rush for ponds in the early
We don't have them yet
2000s.
in Nebraska. We're
Yeah.
still like maybe we'll get a pond.
Yeah.
No,
Uh,
that people like lakes here. Okay, but your point is like ponds became popular,
Yeah.
and you were what? Did you have an area staked out that was your area, like where you were really doing this? Like, because Southern California is big.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? Palm Springs, or like where were you?
Well, it's San Bernardino County, which is, and Palm Springs is Riverside County right next to us. But, yeah, that's Southern California. I would go all the way to San Diego, and then there'd be a San Diego guy that might come to
Okay,
me. So we overlapped a little bit, but like, bro, like an hour away from me, there was a guy doing 100 ponds a year, two guys doing 100 ponds a year, and then an hour and a half south of me, another guy's doing 100, like, so there was definitely a craze going on. It like hit the scene.
okay,
And I'm maybe I was just in the right time at the right, the right spot at the right time,
yeah.
but I had the right
Yeah.
passion, like I was a fish guy. I was different than the
mm-hmm.
landscaper guys. Cause when 2008 hit, there was 18 guys in the yellow pages, right? And then of course the yellow pages were probably diminishing at the time, but like it went from 18 guys in my town to like 3 again because everyone went back. They didn't have it. They went back to work for someone else, try to do something different.
Interesting. Interesting. So let's talk about that time period then. So you go from I'm the only person in the yellow pages to there's a whole different way to find businesses, especially,
Yep.
service businesses. And then we obviously have an economic crisis in 2008.
Yeah. Yeah.
What now going back to being one of a few, what was business like for you in terms of, like, I would imagine that if I'm in a business of building ponds, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that if the financial crisis is hitting, that's one where like, oh, I'm a little worried that maybe not as many folks are going to want to build a pond at this particular moment. Was that kind of what you were feeling at that time? Did it stay the same surprisingly? I guess what was it like for you?
It was a risky time period. It was tough.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I just to throw numbers out there randomly, I was probably doing around $1 million a year in construction, just building ponds only. And we went to like 400 grand, like 60% drop in business right away. So it was a big hit. It was a tough part of my career. The interesting thing is I was leasing a building. It ended in 2007, 2008, like maybe January 2008. It was already kind of crashing, collapsing. And I signed a 10-year lease on a new building, on the freeway for more money than I used to pay. And everybody, my vendors, my friends, everyone's like, dude, this is a bad idea. You got to go home and ride the storm. Like, this is a perfect time to, let the lease expire and just downsize and just ride this out. But I don't know, man. I just didn't have it in me. Idiot savant stuff. I don't know. I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
returning back to home. I'm going to ride the storm out, I'm going to ride the wave.
Yeah. Wow.
How long did it take till like you might have known, let's say in your heart or something,
Mhm.
that this is the right play? 'Cause it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I need like we're going to go bigger. Like, this is my passion. This is what I'm doing. When did you know, if you think it was the right decision? Like, when did you realize, or did it kind of play out that you're like, okay, we did the right thing. It's clear that we did the right thing, going bigger instead of going small, and like leaning in instead of kind of like buckling down.
I remember a pivot moment for me. You know, the business was dropping and we weren't getting as much business. And so it was tough. But I had saved some money, and so my savings were diminishing. And so you saw that happening. But I remember this pivot. I did free pond inspections. I was like, because it used to be like, hey, if you want me to come out to your place, you got to pay me. I'm brilliant. I'm the best pond dude in town.
Yeah.
If you want me to step on your property, you're going to pay. Like, there's that kind of stuff. But I was just like, bro, I remember I had this lifted truck. That's where I came the pond digger in 2003. I had this badass lifted truck, yellow Amarillo package, Ford 4x4, big old tires on it and everything. And I remember when I bought that truck, when I got home, the old wheels were in the back of the truck and tires. I'm like, what are these doing in here? Like, what? Give me credit for them. They're like, nope, you got to take them. I remember putting them in the rafters at my business, right? These little tires, little like 18s. I had 20s on my truck. They're up in the rafters for like 5 years, right? And I couldn't get new tires for my truck, bro. I didn't have the money. It was like, what am I going to do? And I pulled those tires from the roof and put them on my truck, and it looked ridiculous, dude. This badass truck, here I am, rolling around deep in my hard ass truck. And then now I'm riding around on these little things. And I was just like, I'm going to ride this out. I don't care. I don't care what you guys think, I'm going to pull this through. But I remember I did this campaign, and I didn't know how I was going to pay the bills. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. And I did this campaign for free pond inspections. And literally like $40,000 of business came immediately from me going like, hey, I'll come to your place for free and just help you with your pond. And at the time, people were also like, hey, I got to stay home. I'm not going to go on vacation. Maybe we should just stay home and spend a little bit of money on our house. And here I am going out and doing pond inspections. And, today pond inspections are a really important part of my business. And I did them for free. Like, they pay me $500 just to walk on the property and like look at their pond. I don't even get my hand wet. You know what I mean? Like, because that's how much value I can provide to them in my experience. But that was a pivot.
Yeah, touching the water is an extra 500. If I dip a finger in this water, then that's. But I mean, it's.
And if I dip my foot in there, it's 1,000. I'm just telling you, this is how this goes.
Yeah. In fact, it's hard for me because usually I walk on the water. No, but you're describing, different go-to-market strategies that, sometimes you try them and sometimes one thing works or just is right for you. Like today, if you were like, hey, I'm coming out for free, you just don't probably have enough time in the day to go look at every pond that someone wants you to look at. And so you price it like accordingly. But at the same time, I talk to a lot of people who want to do information businesses. Like, they want to do an app, they want to sell a course, they want to like use what they know, what they're an expert at, to make money. And I often tell people, like, you cannot possibly give away too much information for free, because you will become like, the thing that you lack is trust. No one knows who you are. No one cares who you are. No one trusts you because they don't know who you are or care who you are.
Yeah.
And if people trust you, they will happily pay you to show up at their house, tell them everything you know, look at their specific situation. And in this case, it's very concrete, literally, like it's ponds. Like, you need someone to show up and look at it and look at the soil. Like, just, I'm making things up because I don't know how ponds work, but like, that on the site, figure it out. And you could probably, because I read through a little bit of your blog, and I also was going to talk to you about naked gardening on that note, because I've been reading your blog, but that you could give away all the information in there, and probably do, that would help people solve their problem, whether that's your social media, your blog, you name it. And very little can replace someone with deep experience and that you trust because they saw you on social media, they read your blog, they listened to your podcast, you name it, coming out and bringing that value to their specific instance. And that's just, it's worth money, but I feel like a lot of people become I don't know. It's like there's like a short-sighted nature to it where when you are, let's say, the pond digger and you got the wheels back on your truck and the, so to speak, you can and almost need to charge because you bring the value and your time is valuable versus when you're sort of starting out new, you name it, you kind of just have to hustle around and figure out what works. And it sounds like your version of buckling down through the crisis was to invest in the future, both with money, building, etc. But then also, like, I don't know, kind of like claw, do whatever you needed to do, put the small tires on your truck,
Yeah.
show up for free, do all the things that you just had to do to figure out what was going to work. And then you figured it out and it worked.
Yeah.
And that's not a question. I don't know. It ended up being a rant.
Good rant. It's a good rant. It's all true.
I'm interested in, like, can I say I'm interested in ponds? I mean, I like ponds probably as much as the next person. I'm more interested in like sort of like selling things to people. I just got a text from my mom 10 minutes ago who said my uncle's in town. Hey, you want to come out and grill because your uncle's in town? And my uncle is a sculptor. He's a very good sculptor. He makes sculptures. But as far as I'm concerned, he's the best salesperson I've ever met. Like he breathes it. Like I think he's just incredible at it. And he's in the business of like selling art that he makes, which is interesting. And people want like a sculpture of their parent or of this thing. And that, like there's this mix of like, he's doing the job, but it's something that's going to be at their house that's going to reflect on them. That's kind of like a piece of art. And I'm seeing in my mind, I don't know how true this is, like kind of this parallel to like, hey, someone's got to build a pond, be the expert, know what works. But at the same time, hey, this is at my house often. This is kind of like a piece of art in a sense. What have you, I don't know, learned maybe over the last 25 years of doing this about that balance between like, hey, you got to do the work, know what's going to work for the fish, etc. But also the fact that this person, they're going to feel like, I don't know, they're going to be really proud of this thing and your version of selling it to them, making them, I'm just kind of interested in that, just how you think about any of that, honestly.
Well, it sounds to me like your uncle is very passionate about what he does. And that probably just resonates out in just the way he talks about things, right? So I think when you talk to me about fish, it doesn't take long for you to realize I'm like into fish and I'm into the nature aspect of it and the it just doesn't take long. I remember I had this guy on my podcast and he knows me as the pond digger, but he doesn't know that I came from aquariums. Like I build ponds because it's a giant aquarium in your yard, right? Like, oh, you got a 100-gallon aquarium in your house. I got a 5,000-gallon aquarium in my garden, right? So when I'm talking to him, I'm asking him questions about things, and he found out real quick. I literally saw it in his face. He's like, "Oh, you know fish, bro." Like, clearly, right? And it's not because I'm running around using scientific names and what have you. It's just like, oh yeah, well, one time I had this fish and I noticed this about it, and that made me change my mind the way I do things, and this is how I move forward. And he's like, oh crap, not too many people that I know of said something like that. So it probably comes out in your uncle, and people love that, right? If you talk to a landscaper that builds ponds, you're just going to get a sense from him. He's going to communicate to you like, hey, I build ponds because I make money and I got to pay bills. Like that's what comes out of his voice. He might not say it like that, but when you talk to me about a pond, you're like, this guy would probably build me a pond for free if he could. That's how much he loves it, and that's what probably comes out in the sales aspect of it. That's what I would guess.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. I was going to say along with that, going back to your story, obviously ups and downs and figuring this out. And the passion is obviously a big component of keeping you dedicated to this and not going, God, this is getting hard. Like, the ups and downs of it.
It's hard every day. It's hard today.
Yeah. Like what did 08 to now look like though?
Oh, dude, I don't even know if we have enough time, bro. It's been a crazy journey.
It's 15,
Yeah,
17 years,
yeah,
6, 7 years.
dude. It's a crazy time frame because like, look, okay, so in 2008, right before and just here's what I want you to know too. This is kind of deep. I almost bought a Corvette in 2008. I was literally on the floor and I was like, it was a yellow Corvette to match my yellow fucking truck. I test drove it. I mean, I was like, I need to think about this. And then within a month or so, it was just all falling apart. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I did not buy that. But that's the position I was in, and it just went downhill from there. But in 2008, I was ready to. One of my dear friends and I, we had these filters, these new ideas for filters, and we were pitching it to another manufacturer. And the manufacturer would be building our filters. And you know how like Ford has the Eddie Bauer truck, it has the Roush truck, it has the Harley Davidson truck. So it's going to be like, hey, you build these filters for it. It'll be the Pond Digger series under your brand. And like we had the deals, we had things on paper, we had handshakes, we had the CAD drawings of our new filters and all this. And in 2008, last second, he pulled out because he's like, I just lost 3 major distributors. I'm worried about the economy. I just don't want to do it. And so I was like, crap, what am I going to do now? So, then you just toughed it out for 2-3 years. In 2012, I had a completely different idea and I went to market on my own in 2012. We were rebounding at that time. It's still a crazy time. I didn't have that much money and I made my own filter, took it to market, made my own mold, and today it's patented. So that's amazing, right?
Wow.
But that was 2012 to 2000, like maybe 17. That took 5-6 years to get that thing patented. In 2015, I was diagnosed with throat cancer, stage 4 throat cancer. And so I thought I was done. I was like, we're done. This was a good run. And I basically had guys that were with me for like 14 years, 15 years, 10 years. I had a world-class construction team. I got all the guys on my team their own contractor's license, sent them out on their own, said, it's been a good run, guys, thanks. And they're gone. My construction team's gone. I still kept part of my business. And it took me 2.5 years to get healthy. And man, I just am so thankful every single day. But like in 2018, I'm like, I'm okay. I'm still alive, right? I'm still going to make it. And, and I'm going a little deeper than I have with anybody else here, but like from 2018, 19, when I was told that I'd be okay to basically last year, I've kind of been in this stalling pattern because it happens so fast, guys. Like when it happens, you go from like going 100 miles an hour to like you're on a surgery table, like in 2 days, right? So I'm just like, well, what if it comes back? What if I go to my quarterly checkup and I got to go back to the hospital? Why should I press so hard? And so I've been on like this stalling pattern for a long time. But in 2020, I'm like, I'm going to start again. And then what happens in 2020? I mean, geez, yeah, right?
Did something happen? I can't.
So it took me some time, but like today, I'm very honored to tell you, I'm almost emotional thinking about this, but I have a 15-man team. I have a killer office. I have killer staff at home. I bought a 5-acre ranch. I bought 3 trucks in a month ago to expand the business. And, I feel like world class again, but it took some time to do that. And so, it's just a ride, bro. It's just a ride. It's hard every day.
Like, how do you look at business now? Like post.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I have no idea what it's like to get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I mean, I can try. I mean, to imagine, and you gave that rundown, but like you were saying running 100 miles an hour. Like you're in business. There's always like the next problem. I mean, you're in a car right now. I don't think that's where you planned on being for this interview, which leads me to believe something unexpected happens, which is like the life of a contractor and running a business.
Yep.
And so I can imagine that, like, hey, you were going a direction, but just working at it. Then like totally life-changing event. Then world level pandemic. And like, how do you think about your business, growing your business, or just I'm curious how you relate to it almost post post cancer versus before, like in 2015, or I forget the actual dates,
Mm-hmm.
like on the daily toward the future, like what is just, I don't know, different?
What's changed for me, and I'll be transparent. I think most of the people in my life realize this, but probably from 2022 ish range and all that, the world's upside down. There's been a time or two where I thought, could I just go back to being like build one extraordinary pond a month? Could I build one extraordinary pond, every 8 weeks or something like that, and just like be a happy go lucky dude, like, number one, I don't think I could financially get by with that. I don't anymore. That was a real wake up call for me. Like, you have too many people now. We have a wildlife foundation. We rescue animals. Like, I got like 60 owls at home right now. I got like 40 possums. I got like 60 raccoons, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like,
Wow, cool.
This is why you need 5 acres.
Yeah, this is my wife's dream, and I promised her in 2015 I'd get it for her. If I was going to die, I want to get her dream before I died. But luckily, I got her dream, and now I'm still alive to help pay for it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's really a blessing to be able to like go out and do that. But now I have a bigger vision. It's like, I want to create an amazing life for my employees. Like, I have guys that have been with me for 6-7 years now that have toughed it out with me, and now I'm like, how can I serve them? How can I create a better life for them? How can I get them to where they can raise kids and do what they want with them and buy houses and do those kind of things, right? And I have to be a better businessman. I have to be better at all this stuff. And so, that's where I wake up every day. I want to become the best version of myself and get after it.
Eric, can I ask you this?
That's awesome.
I know you said you were in that stalling period, and then all of a sudden it changed. What was the moment? Like, what was it? Was it your wife's dream? Was it something else? But like, going from that stalling pattern of, I just don't know, and then all of a sudden you're talking about, man, you have this massive team, you've done this stuff. Was there a moment? I mean, I don't mean a literal moment, but I just mean, was there something that went from stalling to, I got to get out of the stalling pattern?
Okay. 2019, I heard Andy Frisella do 75 hard. Okay. So I remember I watched it happen live. Like, there wasn't 75 hard. I'm listening to Andy Frisella once or twice a week. And I literally listened to him interview, the Iron Cowboy, and 2 days later, 75 hard was born. I watched it happen. And I started 75 hard back in March. Probably April or May, right after he started it in 2019. And it's been really helpful for me. And, listening to Andy and all this stuff, I was still in that stalling pattern because I was just barely recovering from the whole thing. Right. But, I think and I do 75 hard once or twice a year. And currently I'm in a different aspect of it, but I read a book by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time. And he talked about the time assassins in his book, right? And there's 5 time assassins, and 2 of them just plagued me. One was the self-medicator, drinking beer every night, just like, okay, I'm done for the day. I don't have to work any harder. And then the staller, I didn't realize I was a staller. I realized I drank beer every day, and I drank beer to like slow down. Like, I've had enough. I worked hard. I need a beer, So reading, following Andy Frisella, Bedros Keuilian, Ed Milet, like, this is a big part of my life now, right? So following those guys kind of snapped me out of it. And Dan Martell's book was really the one that pushed me over the edge.
Wow. Super cool. Well, I don't want to, these are important topics, but I do know that having done ponds for as long as you have, and I want to get to the educational piece because I know that's important in what you've done too, but like, what are your craziest pond installation inspection stories? I know you've probably got a few that people have asked or you have told, but I was thinking about this interview today and I'm like, we can ask crazy plumbing stories and those are always good. And we can ask some other ones, but I'm like, I think Eric probably could be like our top interesting story guest when it comes to things that I've seen that I did not expect when building or servicing a pond or something to do with fish. I guess, what are your top stories when it comes to that kind of stuff?
What one jumps out at me is in like the Palm Springs area in the desert, and we built this beautiful pond. I don't know, almost 2 decades ago. Well, they called me and they said they had a problem with the pond, and I go out there. It looks like a literal oasis. Like the whole yard's green and beautiful, and like it just looks unbelievable, right? She's like, I'm losing a lot of water. My water bill's high. So we inspect the pond, and I find a leak in the pond that her dog had dug around in the creek, and so this leak was going on. So we fixed the leak, and this was in the summertime, the beginning of summer, and she called me like 3 weeks later, furious with me, right? And I couldn't figure out why. Like, what's going on? She's like, you did something, all my plants are dying, and da 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 da. And so what it turned out was I fixed the leak. The leak had been leaking for years and leaking all around her property and created this oasis, right? And when I fixed the problem, things started to decline, and she was upset with me about it. She's like, you need to come back here and put holes back in my pond. You need to come and
That's so
make
funny.
my pond leak again. I'm like, I can't do that. Yeah, that was a crazy one.
You thought you were fixing her pond, but you were actually killing her like aquifer.
Yes,
That was aquifer, whatever that is, under the ground water. That's amazing.
That is amazing. That's awesome.
Oh my goodness.
Well, Eric, tell me about what you're doing today. I mean, I think with what you're doing with social and everything, and I just I'll be honest, not to sound cheesy or anything, but man, just watching your stuff makes me happy. I can hear the passion in your voice. I can hear how passionate you are about stuff. I hear how passionate you are talking to other people on these social videos. What is really pushing you, aside from your business and aside, being healthy is chief number one. I get that. Yeah. But what else is got you really excited? What other projects have you excited today? If somebody was just meeting and hearing about the Pond Digger for the first time, what would you want to tell them you're working on right now, and what's the future look like?
So I do have a contractor coaching group. I do have a course. I don't really sell the course. I'm not out there trying to push courses or anything, but I have a program to help contractors, communicate better with people. And and part of my podcast is I do a podcast once a week for contractors and entrepreneurs, and I do a podcast for pond freaks. And I'm very passionate about teaching contractors how to understand their numbers and do all that stuff. I got a little mini tour going on. I'm speaking in Kentucky next week. I'm speaking in Denver the week after that. I have a couple of Zoom calls.
Hold on, are you going to the Equip Expo?
Yeah, I'll be at Equip.
Oh, yeah. I'll be at the Equip Expo.
Cool. Let's connect for sure.
Come say hi to you over there.
Yeah, let's send me a text so we can get our numbers.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but
no,
the Equip Expo. Nothing beats it. Yeah. I love the Equip. Okay, anyway, sorry, keep going. You're speaking at the Equip Expo then?
I'm speaking at LCR Summit, which is right in front of it. And then I'm going to be podcasting at Equip. And then I'm going to Denver to the Owasso Atlantic Seminar. I got another speaking engagement planned in March next year in Oklahoma. And then I have some Zoom meetings that I'm doing for people. So I had this lady that I helped because she's the first person that said, Eric, I need you to be my coach. I'm like, I'm not a coach. What are you talking about? Right. And, I'll share numbers with you. I can't, you'd have to verify with her if you don't believe me, but she was doing $250,000 a year with her husband. And this was 2.5 years ago. She's over 2.5 million this year. And it's about learning how to communicate. And she still spends tons of time with her kids, goes on vacation 2-3 times a year. But now she knows her numbers. She knows how to communicate. She knows how to have, crush limiting beliefs and all that stuff. And it's very powerful to me. In my coaching group, it's not uncommon, on a Friday accountability call where grown ass men are crying, and so there's something really empowering to me about that, changing those kind of lives in that regard. And I'm basically I'm helping myself who I was 10, 15 years ago. I'm helping that person. So that's been my big message lately.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? As the older you get, and I always say, if you can survive a certain period of your life, right? It's the dirty little secret is you grow up and, even if things started off really well, there's this period of your life. It's if you can get through that, part of the journey is helping others as they're going through that journey and being like, hey, I already went through the wall. I got bloodied. Let me see if I can help you with this so you don't go through all the same mistakes. Well, let me ask you this, Eric. And we're going to definitely put info with the Good Contractor podcast when it goes on YouTube. In the description, I'm going to put links so you can check out all of Eric's stuff, the podcast, etc. So I just want to point that out, that we'll have that in there. But we always ask everybody when we finish up, what makes a good contractor? And I don't know if there's anyone better to ask than you, not just for what you've done and accomplished and what you've overcome, but what you're doing now, I think is equally as amazing. So Eric, if you had to answer that question, what makes a good contractor, what would you say?
Well, I would put passion first, passion for what you do, but more importantly than that probably is really understanding and communicating with your customer and making that experience for them. For me, one of the things is when I build a pond for someone, sometimes they've literally spent their entire life, investing and saving and pulling aside money for me to do that into their yard, to build that water feature, and I do it every day, and contractors do it every day, but they lose that empathy and understanding that the customer, like, this is the only time they're ever going to do this, maybe. And so to really create that ultimate customer experience, I really believe that you can make the world a better place by creating a really good experience, customer to client, client to contractor experience when you're working with them. You need to understand them. You need to listen to them. You need to shut your mouth, not override them. And all that can be demonstrated in the way you talk to people. And those are some of the things I teach. Like if I had never talked to Luke before and he called me and he wanted to have a pond built for him, within 20 minutes, I could demonstrate that I'm professional, I'm curious, I'm bold, I'm courageous, I'm organized, I have a process. I can demonstrate that in the way I talk to them. And too many contractors nowadays, they demonstrate impatience and rudeness and, and tardiness. They just demonstrate like they don't listen, they have no empathy, and that can be done. And so I think that's one of the that's what makes a good contractor, is understanding people and listening. And that's my mission as I tailor off in life. That'll be my end of year's goal, to make that happen well for people.
That's amazing. Eric, this was a blast, my friend. I am so glad we got a chance to do this. And I wish you all the best. You two are going to get together at Equip Expo. I'm not going to be there, but I'm sure I'm going to be at an event soon, so we'll get a chance to finally meet in person. But I'll leave it to you two in Louisville. But Eric, thank you so much, man. It was great to meet you.
Thanks, man. Awesome. Luke, hit me up.
Yep.
Send me your message.
Thanks, Eric.
Send me your number.
I will. Yeah.
All right.
I'll find you. See you, man.